because I think it has some interest for other people as well. All right, let me go back here. This is a wanted poster. These are fingerprints. Those are the photographs of her. She was wanted by the FBI. It's a little hard to read on the top, but you can see it on the stuff I'm running around. And I got involved in the Elizabeth Duke case when I was approached in 2013 because there was something peculiar that happened in this case, which happens in the criminal justice system and the civil system as well. I'm going to jump over the legal nonsense. You're always welcome to go back and look at that. But what was where this story starts is the press release by the U.S. Attorney's Office back in 1988, where they were proud to announce that they had the grand jury had indicted these individuals, Elizabeth Duke among them, for bombing. Someone can help her with the garbage. Okay. She had bombed the Capitol building back in 1983, along with some other people, had bombed the Navy Yard, had been involved with people bombing Wall Street, and was involved in the robbery of a Brinks truck in Long Island, where they stole $1.7 million, killed 2 police officers in the process. So she was indicted. This is the press release talking about what she did, the bombings at the National War College, at the Washington Navy Yard, at the Navy Yard's Officers Club. We're not only living in time of people bombings, but this was going on in the 1980s. So she was indicted, arrested. She was arrested with keys to a storage locker that had TNT or dynamite in it and lots of fake IDs. She was brought in front of a judge, and the judge posted her bail at $300,000. Her family put up their home in Texas as security for the $300,000. Elizabeth Duke was let out of jail, and no one has seen her since. Now, curiously, you jump forward to 2009, and this order is entered. And this is a legal document. You can see at the top, it's got the case number, when it was filed, and it's page 1 of 1. It's a one-page order. And like every legal document, it first lists the court on the top, the name of the parties, United States versus Elizabeth Duke, the case number. This has got the date stamp of when it was filed. And here's an interesting order. It says, upon consideration of the government's oral motion to dismiss, indictment, and quash the arrest warrant, the record herein, and for the reasons set forth in the government's motion, and for good cause shown, it is on the 17th day of June, 2009, ordered that the above case is dismissed without prejudice and that the arrest warrant is quashed. So now, Deborah Robinson signs as a United States District Court judge this order dismissing an indictment. This is an indictment against somebody who planned a bomb in the Capitol building. It's hard for us to imagine now that if Tsarnaev got out of jail for bombing the Boston Marathon bomber, disappeared for 30 years, someone would walk into court and dismiss the indictment against him. So they asked me to find out why this happened, and so I dug around and demanded the hearing transcript of this hearing on June 17th, 2009, and it took quite a bit of wrangling for me to get the transcript out of the court, but ultimately they had to give it to me because I had heard the transcript over the telephone by mistake. And here's the transcript. So here we are in the same court, same parties, same case number. Here's the date of the hearing. And notice here it says transcript of status conference before the Honorable Deborah A. Robinson, United States Magistrate Judge. Now, if you look up here, she signs the order as United States District Court Judge, but in fact, she is a magistrate judge, and the difference is significant because you can only be a district court judge if you're appointed for life under Article 3 of the United States Constitution, and you only can lose your job for bad behavior. You are given a large volume of authority, including the right to dismiss indictments for good cause shown by the government when it's appropriate. A magistrate judge is appointed only for 6 years under Article 1 of the Constitution and has a very limited role, which most explicitly does not include indictments. So here you have Magistrate Robinson signing it as a district court judge when she's not, felony number 1. Secondly, here is the transcript of the entire proceeding on that June 17, 2009 hearing. The clerk, as usual, introduces the attorney for the government, Mr. Beatrice. Mr. Beatrice comes in this and only this. Thank you, Your Honor. We would orally move to dismiss this case at this time, dismiss the indictment, and also to quash the warrant, and we will submit a proposed order today, Your Honor. The court, very well. Thank you, Mr. Beatrice. Now that's it. Now in the order itself, if you go back and look, it says for the reasons set forth in the government's motion. It's an oral motion dismissed and there are reasons set forth. Obviously, there are no reasons set forth. Now, many times there are very good reasons. Sometimes the defendant has died and there's no reason to keep the case open anymore. And as a result, you come in, and I was a criminal prosecutor, by the way, for 5 years. You come in and say, Judge, the defendant's dead. Here's the death certificate. We're moving to dismiss the indictment. No sense keeping this warrant open, wasting judicial and law enforcement resources looking for somebody who we know is 6 feet under. And that's the reason, that's the good cause, and you dismiss it. Sometimes they're convicted in another court and their sentence is so long, it just gilds the lily to try them all over again and sentence them again. And you go in and say, Judge, this person's 30 years in Texas. There's no sense keeping this case open. We just move to dismiss the indictment. That's fine. This didn't happen in this case. But there's no good cause was shown, no reason was given, yet the indictment's dismissed against this woman. That's how justice sometimes works. And I put out because I think it's very important to understand that our system doesn't work quite the way you think it should.
I'm just trying to figure out how this, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how this. I'm surprised.
It's difficult to comprehend, isn't it?
Yeah, it is that someone would lie that they're. Was she an actual district court judge?
No, she's a magistrate judge. She still sits there.
So then why did she say she was a district?
Well, here's some background. Her son was arrested in Baltimore City with possession of a pound of heroin, a shotgun, and a handgun. Under Maryland law, that he was looking at 30 years in state prison in the roughest, one of the roughest state prison systems in the country. The number of violent deaths per 1,000 inmates in the Maryland prison system is around 7. Everywhere else, it's less than 1 per 1,000. And in the federal system, it's under half a per person per 1,000, if you will. It's very low. So he got arrested in November of 2008. Was looking at this long term. The federal government came in and preempted the state prosecution. And you just learned the term preemption. The federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, came in and said, we're going to prosecute this case so the state cannot. And then they offered him a plea deal where he, instead of looking at 30 years in Maryland prison, he was offered 5 years at Club Fed up in Hagerstown, where it's rough because you have to use a credit card to get things out of the soda machine, and you do have to make a special time on the tennis court so you can't use them up there. He was offered that. He pled guilty. He pled guilty 3 days before this June 17th hearing in 2009. After the hearing, a month later, he was sentenced to 5 years, served 3.5, and he got out a lot earlier. Are those two events connected? I can't say.
Does it suspect that maybe there was some potential, I guess, such a blackmail and she was trying to keep it? Or was there some suspect that there was some relation between her and individual?
Well, those are significant and important questions. I actually took this case to the United States Supreme Court. This is the brief that I filed at the United States Supreme Court, saying I filed it as a private attorney general. I made that up. But I said, you have an obligation to look into this because the waters of justice are being polluted by that. They refused to deal with it. The D.C. Circuit Court refused to deal with it. And Judge Roberts, who is the chief judge of the district court, who is supervisor over Magistrate Robinson, refused to deal with it as well. So all that's to say, take with a grain of salt everything you see, because it isn't seventh grade civics out there by any stretch of the imagination. So let me just back off Elizabeth Duke for a second, unless anybody has any questions about that at this time.